bicked it or whatever. I mean, it's been maybe half an inch, quarter inch, but never fully bald. So
I met someone yesterday that apparently like people can tattoo like little follicle things on your head. So like you know how like you have like a after shadow, whatever it's called. They actually do that. They tattoo it on people's head. So as long as you keep your hair really, really low, as if like you're bald head and now it's like 3 or 4 days later where the hair's starting to sprout out again, it looks really, really, I can't tell the difference.
hmm.
I wouldn't do that. I probably would have done it if I had money and like I started losing my hair like 10 years ago, but now I just accepted it. It's hard to deal with the aging process, man. You think you're like immortal and everybody else is like too bad for them, and then like you start going bald, you start getting hair sprouting out. You're like, God damn, like I can't believe this is happening to me. I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to grays, more grays coming in though. I think gray hair makes I think a man look distinguished a little bit.
There's
So
probably bias when it comes to discussing business. They'll think because you have gray hair and you wear a suit that you obviously know what you're talking about, which isn't true at all. Oh, and if you have a European accent, you must be really intelligent. No. Anyways, I'm done venting. Um,
yeah.
I saw your wood table that you're building. I think you are a carpenter, man. You must have like Amish in you.
I don't, but it's fun to put that stuff together. I mean, it's not incredibly difficult. Mostly, I've been winging it and just trying some things, and it's fun because when you do that, you produce problems that you have to solve, and so it's a bit like
Programming.
you have to programming. You do some creative problem solving around it. So like last night I was trying to get the actual tabletop on, and I got about 3 feet from done on that, uh, but there's this one section where I'm going to have the board that is kind of down vault. There's a vault, and then there's this inset board that's the game surface, right? I'm going to have that actually push up from underneath against this rail that goes around side. Well, the rail I did unevenly in one section, so it's pushed down on one of the rails further than the others. So it's creating this surface where there's the elevation is different or whatnot. So I'm gonna have to go buy a chisel and take it to that and try to chisel out just enough where it's flush across, which isn't gonna be too easy. But and then I the other thing I done is I had made the base too wide. If you saw the picture of that base, I made that way too wide. And so my original solution, which I'm working on right now, is to actually just like put the ends kind of over that, and then it sunk a little bit. I made it too tall as well. But I'm thinking I might actually chop the 2x4 I have in the middle, chop that down, the one that runs along the bottom, chop it down, and then bring it in together, and then put two 2x4s on either side to kind of hold it tight. It'll be a bulkier bottom, but then it'll give the people on the end more leg room, and then allow that to push up on that play surface thing. So I don't know. It's kind of like when you get into this, it's unless you have a plan and you're just literally constructing. It's kind of like going through the development process where the first time you build it, it's probably going to be choppy together, but after that, if you rewrite it, or rebuild it, exactly where the cuts are and everything. You can fix all the little mistakes that you made and clear out all of the imperfections and things. So, but yeah, it's coming along. I wish I could get more time to work on it. I got a wedding this weekend, and then so I'll have some time Sunday probably, and then whatever I can do next week. But I'm hoping that by the end of next week, I could probably have, most of the actual table assembled, I guess. The one bit that I'm thinking hard about is just all of the features I want to put around the outside rim. So there's all sorts of things you can do with cup holders and drawers and shelves and dice table or dice bins or dice chutes or dice towers. There's book shelving, writing surfaces, you name it. I mean, a lot of folding shelves. There's a bunch of people have made these and they've all done it a bunch of different ways. So I'm trying to go through and figure out what will work and what will look nice.
So when you say you're gonna be done,
I don't know. That the just trying to figure out what I want to do on those edges will probably end up taking me longer than I want, but I'm hoping I could get done by the what is it, the 20th today. So if I had a good couple weekends to work on it, oh man, I'm hoping maybe in a couple weeks I can have at least everything assembled. And then I'll have to just do the sanding, staining, and other stuff that I want to do with finishing, which will take a little bit longer. So probably mid-July I'll be done, I'm guessing. I'm hoping. So, and then I'll get in my brother-in-law's store, hopefully, and then we'll see if see what people think and if anybody would want something similar. So I can always call it the prototype and be like, the version we would make for you would be better. I don't know.
how do you sell it on Amazon?
Hmm?
How do you sell it on Amazon?
I wouldn't sell it on Amazon. Most likely, it'd be better on Etsy if I was going to sell it online.
Etsy.
Etsy's like a consumer to consumer, like a DIY marketplace type thing. So people will, if they've got like crafts or projects like this that they're trying to hawk, Etsy's pretty much a place to do that. So it's kind of like custom products, I guess. Or I think Amazon actually recently launched a service called like Handmade or something like that, very similar to that, I think.
Mm. Cool.
But really, I would try to market them to the local crowd and see if I can drum up some business. I think if I could get the actual design down, once if you actually can get everything assembled, this is what it's going to look like. Then it's literally just buy the wood, do the cuts, assemble, done. It's taking me a while because I'm actually thinking through how do I want this thing to look. So it is that kind of like it's more like closer to akin to like prototyping process and stuff. You know how like your app, you're building out the front end and then you tried it with some stuff and you're like, oh, this didn't work because they didn't know how to do this, or this didn't work because this was well, it's like that, you like, okay, I found the rough edges, now how do I fix them within this build? And then after that, once everything's good, it'll be a little rough around the edges, but it should come together in the end and be a pretty nice table. So
And then you can make it out of like carbon and titanium, sell it at different prices. Yeah. So, I haven't. People stop inviting me to poker parties, and my time with Black folks since I moved to Florida isn't really significant, given my career or lifestyle. So I don't really get to play card games either. So like in other words, like I'm kind of out of touch with like the whole like board games and card game lifestyle. When I played poker, I used to talk trash, and like if I was getting like good hands, I would bully the mess out of whoever was hosting the party. They just stopped inviting me. So. Yeah, that was back in Cleveland. So.
Yeah, I haven't played much in the way of poker, but there's games like kind of I don't entry level kind of like not like the Monopolies and stuff like that you'd play as a kid. Monopoly. I don't really like Monopoly very much, but I don't know if you've heard a game like Settlers of Catan is probably one of the most well known or broadly played games in this kind of arena that people would play. It'll sound totally weird. It's like the game is called Settlers of Catan. It's basically this hexagonal island, and you build roads and towns, which are just little chunks of wood between edges of the hexagon, and you collect like wood, bricks, sheep, wheat, and stone, and you buy things and there's a trading aspect to it.
You mean Oregon Trail?
No, it's a bit different than that. There is an Oregon Trail game now, like board game or card game.
Xbox Live.
No, it's an actual like physical game.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, it sounds kind of dopey, but when you actually play it, it's pretty fun because there's there's some chance involved, and then there's there's a trading phase where you get to barter with people, and that kind of adds a layer because you can you have to decide like, oh, do I give this person my 2 sheep to get that one brick that I really, really need? But I know if they get these 2 sheep, they're gonna do this with them. So
it's kind of like living in Afghanistan or something. Like,
yeah, yeah,
goats for whatever. Anyway, so like, has your lifestyle changed where now you're watching home improvement shows more often, and you're like in the forums and asking questions and getting blasted for asking stupid questions? Like, have you transitioned over?
No, I've watched a lot of YouTube videos in recent weeks, and then there's like I think it's like a board game geek or something like that. There's a forum out there that has people who've built custom tables. So I've looked through a lot of I haven't contributed at all, but I've looked through a lot of posts about table height and fold outs and cup holders and cup holder positions and this kind of stuff to get just readouts on people's opinions on those things. But I haven't contributed or asked questions. I don't tend to ask a lot of questions with those kinds of things. I normally like to figure it out.
Yeah. I feel like there's high costs to scrap. Like, you make the wrong cut. I assume you have to measure twice, cut once. But like, I'm just horrible. So like, how much have you wasted in like miscalculations?
With this one, like I had that little bit off. I'll chisel a little bit away yesterday, and then if I end up shrinking the base, I'll have to cut some away, and then I'll have to use 2 pieces that I didn't intend to. But the thing about the one I'm building now is for the base I'm using construction grade lumber, and for the top I'm using pine, and they're like the cheapest woods you can get. So like that whole base that I built out, if you saw that picture, that was like 16, 18 bucks to make, maybe. And because each one of the 2x4 is basically like $2, bought and sold 8 feet of it. So maybe 220 at the most. And a pine board, they range from, for the ones I've been buying, they range from like $1.77 a board up to, I think the most expensive one I bought so far was like $3.19. So there's parts of those that I haven't used yet, but I'll probably end up using a lot of it. I'm tracking the cost down though. I'm marking down, here's the thing that I bought, and then when I use it, I'm marking it down so that I can track the total cost at the end in terms of just raw wood and stuff. And then I'm going to add in a fixed cost for screws and dowels and glue and stuff like that, just so I don't have to track those little things. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of potential for waste, which is why building it out of pine is kind of good when you're doing this kind of stuff. If I was building like an actual, if I had a plan, a full plan, and I wanted to build something really quality, I'd buy like oak or maple or cherry or some sort of like hardwood.
Mm-hmm.
And those are like, those get to be really expensive. The same table top or something might be like, just the boards that run along the top of a table might be like, $70-$80 more than what I pay for the pine. So that's where you're getting in. If I think if I can get it down where I'm building pine tables all right, I would probably switch over and build a higher end, oak table probably. And it would just be but I'd be terrified of wasting money though too.
Yeah.
So,
That's what's up.
you're building out your server side, huh?
Yeah, like I'm like 95% done with the app, as far as I know, with the client app.
Yeah.
And I tossed this to somebody while I was on the beach yesterday, and there wasn't really any issues, with the exception of that person was like an iPhone user, so she didn't know what where the back button was, um, which makes me believe that I need a, outside of the back button being on the actual hardware of an Android device, I need to add like a back button icon. That was pretty much it. It was pretty smooth, finally. I mean, I incorporated hella feedback from like maybe a month ago, so I'm glad that things are finally progressing. So yeah, now I'm working on the server side. Oh yeah, and I added last Friday. I committed to implementing um, the options with the mill. So for example, you pick one side, two sides, etc. So I got that built in. That was a cool problem to solve, or um, cool thing to model. If it weren't for unit tests and the compiler, I would probably quit. All right, I still don't see, and I'm not going to go too much on a tangent, but I just don't see how people can build like software for professional businesses that are paying them, and they'll just and then like 2-3 months later, like they have no clue what the consequences are for fixing this one bug, or trying to fix a bug, or trying to add a feature, or trying to clean up the code. Like that's negligence and stupidity. And then you have the ones that don't even have a compiler, and so they're just all right. I'm done going on a tangent, but seriously, like I mean, I spent a lot of time refactoring just to get part of that feature in, and like I touched like damn near 20 files. Like, how do people not do that without automated tests, let alone a compiled language? So
Yeah. I
it's probably a different workflow when it comes to my rant against not using a compiler. I'm sure it has to be a different workflow. So maybe there's certain things that they just don't experience. But it's just irresponsible to not have automated tests. You're literally burning the client's budget on your negligence that you choose to do. I'm done ranting.
Yeah, I'm kind of in, well, it depends on what you mean for tests, but I'm maybe in the stupid column in some of those regards, but I do really love having a compiler, assuming it comes from the start. I'd rather not. I'd rather have the compiler do the work than the unit tests have to do the work for me. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
If something can't get in if something shouldn't be in a state, why am I making a type that allows it to be in a state, or why am I using a type that'll allow it to be in that state? But I don't know. It's I've run into the C# code we write gets unit tests, and a lot of them don't really end up getting. A lot of them mostly are, I feel like, are waste because we just, most of the problems in that arena are caught by other things. But um, in the JavaScript world, it's it's awful. But we do have some of these jest tests and things, but it doesn't matter. People. The problem that I feel like people is when they get into unit testing is they focus on the tree and not the forest, and so they're like, oh, this tree is perfect. I built the tree, and then even if they've got a bunch of trees with unit tests, they don't test it themselves within.
Integration.
Yeah, they don't do the integration. So I feel like the integration tests or testing it from the perspective of this is what somebody would actually do. Uh, uh, like I wish, like I would love to get more automated around that because I feel like those things are really, really useful. I've seen some other people echo that kind of thing too. I've seen some like maybe Jimmy Bogard talks a little bit about, hey, why don't we just integration tests, or you'll learn way more from that. And I saw something from another person saying, hey, write the unit tests but then delete them right after because they're just a maintenance headache. But write your integration tests and your end-to-end automated stuff. So but yeah, I mean, there's so much emergent behavior in software that I sit down and I run my code and I run through scenarios as if I'm the user, and I look for things that are just odd, or and I investigate them. Usually, there's times when I don't investigate and then I kick myself in the ass for it, um, but the I end up finding way more, and I don't have very much in the way of bug reports. My one fear, though, is what you said, is that changes that come down, am I contributing to people making mistakes in those because they don't know what to test? So, um, yeah, it's I don't know, it's rough.
Yeah. So I mean that was a little rant. Um, so now like I said, I feel like I'm like 95% done with at least with the user experience, right? For the client app. Now there's other things that I need to do. So I need to introduce SQLite for local storage to basically hold on to credit card information on the device itself, um, as well as I don't know anything else that whatever.
Yeah,
Really, just credit card information, so they could pick their payment site. Um,
maybe some
so
cache menu items and stuff like that. Maybe just cache strings, or the
no,
menu items built into the app.
no. The stretch goal, which I can almost guarantee won't happen anytime soon, because it requires a web admin page, and I don't do websites, is to basically have an admin site where you catalog the what you want to be displayed in the app. So the app basically will some arbitrary user, like some restaurant or whoever, will instead of updating the database, they'll just go to a website with their login and they'll modify the prices or add new images for whatever menu item. That's that's a maintainable solution, so that it reduces me having to do everything, and uh, participants of the program or of the application can just go in and make edits or deletions or new additions. That's a stretch goal. That's not going to get done anytime soon. Um, for the services, I feel like I need to use this opportunity to update my resume and put myself in a position to get other types of jobs outside of just desktop development or mobile development. So I am going to be a microservice developer, right? aka DevOps developer, aka blockchain developer, and any other buzzword that's in there. Well, scratch off the last two parts. But I am going to use this as an opportunity to get into Azure. I haven't done anything with Azure. Like one of my mentors actually has a published book on Azure, and I don't know anything about it, right? But I got a couple services, skeleton solutions that I built. So there's like a delivery request service, which is a standalone solution. There's a courier service solution, and then there's a order product service solution. So those are the three services that I'm going to be building out. Couriers is basically dealing with the availability of someone to accept the request from the beachgoer and to be able to send updates, status updates that will percolate through the system, for lack of a better term. Um, the order product service is essentially order food service. So I just want to make it abstract enough for my very, very long-term goal of just building out the infrastructure on the back end to just stamp out mobile apps for mom and pop businesses. So order products are more abstract than order food, but it's essentially an order food service, meaning that if a restaurant or maybe a grocery store has some type of IT infrastructure where you can place an order online, then it'll basically leverage that service and have a lot of different restaurants they could send web requests to, so that they can receive the order and prepare it as a courier is on their way to pick it up. So those are the three services. Delivery request is just the aggregator, right? It's the facade that's going to interact between the order product service and the courier service. So the back end is probably going to take me, I assume, probably 3 months to stamp out if I only average 2 hours, 7 days a week. Slow motion. So, but I'm somewhere now, right? So I have an app that looks functional. Maybe I should run it by half a dozen more people, just in case the last person just wasn't being nice to me. But I feel like, yeah, let's start thinking about the back end, and then let's start integrating this, and then let's decorate my resume, and let's buy like a couple electric beach bikes with some trailers attached, and get some nice branding on there, and figure out how that is going to work out. So the market is there. It is. So
Yeah, just gotta get that first one in.
yeah, I have a feeling that by the time I get all this done, I'm not going to be available to actually do deliveries except for the weekend, which is going to have consequences because people are going to use the app during the week as well, and no one's going to be there to accept the request, and then they're just going to give it a bad rating and never ever use it again. While I'm trying to make a living for myself because I ran out of money, so I need to get a job again. So, which reminds me, I just bought like Chevron, ExxonMobil, and Shell stock, because I try to take advantage of events and make it to my opportunity with the whole Iran thing. So maybe that'll make a little bit of money for me. That's it.
Cool. Yeah, we'll see what happens there. The yeah, I mean that seems like a pretty good plan as far as all the backend services go. Yeah,
Have you
I've
ever
been.
you do microservices?
You mean services?
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah.
You
Well,
do
I mean,
I feel like it should be called multi-services because I mean, micro is like pretty specific, right? But we just say, oh, we did. Yeah, we're cool. We're in the in crowd. Do business with us, with every other buzzword that they use. So,
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about what we're building at work, we're saying that we're building a microservice. I feel like that means, I mean, I feel like that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So, I mean, it's just the same thing, different day. We're building a web service for certain things. We tried to be a little bit more micro to start. Actually, we ended up being like we were going to be micro ready is the way we kind of framed it. So like within the same deliverable, we had like four or five different services in there that had different, endpoints, but they were all served out of the same, thing. So they weren't independently deployable, but they were split up such that they had their own databases and their own, startups and everything. So that should we need to actually split it out to something where, whoa, this thing is getting used all the time and we need to scale it independently, but we don't need all of this extra stuff with it. We could do that. I don't know. I'm just waiting for the monolith to come back as like, this is the way you build software is the monolith.
And now we're going to have a whole bunch of conference talks on building monoliths.
Yeah. It'll be like, look, you get no network latency. Everything should just be together. The machines are fast enough. You just have to distribute across cores. It'll be, you just have, and actually, I mean, really a monolith I don't think that is that bad if you actually just spread if you're able to spread or keep boundaries between things. It's all about boundaries. So easy with microservices because you put a physical boundary between them, a network or whatever.
Yeah, but, like I don't know if you ever looked at like my Visual Studio solution, but it's essentially a distributed monolith.
Yeah.
There's an account library, there's a shopping cart library, there's a order request library, and they're just separate project libraries that don't have any dependencies on one another.
Yeah. So
that you could, if it grows, you can just push it out into its own quote unquote service. But yeah, I think distributed monoliths is going to be the next craze.
Yeah, everything comes back, right? So it's way back when they had everything on mainframes, and then it went to PCs. Oh, everything's on your PC, and then that became ASL, so everything's back in the server side. And I don't know. It's cyclical, but I don't know. We'll see what comes of it, but I don't know.
We didn't have clouds. We had server farms, and then they just changed the name.
Yeah. When it comes to it, though, I don't think the software is as bad as people think. Like most software, like a lot of software, it's bad just because people, weren't there to write it. But like, if it's deployed and doing its job and doing it well, and people aren't complaining about it, it's good software.
Well, it's good software.
Yeah.
When it's good software, people want to add on to it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't scale. And I mean, I think that's the biggest issue. Like, what software? Or let me ask this question: how many examples can you provide where software that is recognized as being well done isn't still being maintained, meaning they're still adding features to it? So like something that I think would be solid that probably doesn't need any new features, but I'm sure that they probably are adding features to it in one way or another. Is like Google Maps. That's good software, right? But I'm sure that they're still adding more and more features to it. Like, for example, mine, I have the different themes that you could put on it, so you have different color skins on your maps. But make long story short, it's just a scaling problem with software. You build something, it works. The CEO says, "Oh, this is incredible," and then someone in marketing says, "Yo, can you add this as well to it?" I really want to sell this to someone that needs it, and then it just starts getting out of control because it's not congruent. So,
Yeah. Software is just in the process of building software is, purely chaotic, right? Everything's chaotic. You don't know what's going to come up. So, yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm realizing more and more like efforts that I make to try to future proof things or like abstract things away because we could actually make this reusable if we did this before it's needed are totally wasted 9 times out of 10, or just add confusion. I'm starting to actually chip away at some of that stuff and be like, you know what, I'm just going to make this work, and then I'm minimally, and then I'm just going to be done with it instead of thinking a lot about the future expandability of it. I think like once you get your architecture in place, as long as that's you can put things in and swap it out, which is maybe what comes to the microservice thing. Like we use in our current system, we use Mediator to handle all of our requests. So we receive a web request in, and we'll pass it off to a Mediator, and then that'll send it to a command handler. Mm-hmm. And that works perfect because you just you have that separation between there, and if you want to change out the behavior, you just write a new command handler and swap it out in your dependency injection. Boom, you're done. And we don't have a lot of interfaces that we're writing a ton of that stuff because basically everything's reduced to basically what amounts to like a function, right? We've got some data in, does some stuff, and then it returns a response. So I don't know. It's like our backend's pretty well easily ripped up. It's the front end that's such a pain. Like,
I ran a poll on Twitter asking which is more time consuming for constructing and debugging, and the two options were UX design or domain modeling. UX design almost had like 96% of the votes.
Yeah, that's where I put my vote.
Yeah, I didn't expect it to be damn near 100%. I expected most of the people. I guess the demographic of the people that follow me probably are functional programmers, and that's probably why. Because I wasn't expecting it to be one-sided. Yeah, someone else needs to run that poll on normal developers that are doing like Ruby, JavaScript, C#. Yeah.
Well, I'm doing JavaScript. I don't know. It's that's and it depends on what you mean by UX though. I might be bundling UI work in there as well, but it's definitely it's fairly easy to model something in the back, like on the server side, especially if you got a compiled language. You just make types that represent things, and it like I feel like dealing with the database is probably the hardest part of that. But you get in the UI, especially web UI, and making things consistent across browsers technologies that are still inconsistent. Way better than they used to be, but still inconsistent. It's like, I don't know, that takes way longer than anything else. I can add a new procedure in a domain module and stuff, all that stuff to the back end, probably pump that out in a few days, but to put a website together and make it usable and have people understand it and make it so that they've got things like forgiveness and they don't make mistakes about the way the layout is or whatever. That stuff takes time.
Are there any like books that are almost biblical when it comes to UX design and these are general like practices, so like there's stop licking me. So it's always weird, man. It's always weird. Like for example, like Domain Modeling Made Functional was like really, really good book that completely changed the way that I'm building systems now, right? Is there anything on like the UX side where like it's just a really good um, point of reference that the entire community will more than likely support as a go-to?
Yeah, I'm not totally sure on that. I'm sure there is. Some of the stuff that I've read about. Have you looked into is it Gestalt theory or whatever? Um, so Gestalt theory is like it talks about the ways that our brain pattern matches, and then how you can kind of, I mean, you can bring that forward in design. So there's things like it's basically psychological effects, like things in proximity to each other. And some of these are obvious, like things in proximity to each other are considered
Related.
grouped. Yeah, they're related. What else is it? Similarity between things. So if you like this one, if you have a bunch of circles and you have a bunch of squares, the similarity between those things, you can kind of group them in a way. Yeah, I don't know. So I think like looking through those things are good. I've also heard the book like was it The Design of Ordinary Things? Um, is pretty good. I don't know if it's hard. Um, it's
But it's
hard
not
to
like
know.
programming related though. These are more like theoretical.
Yeah, and I'm sure that people have basically taken those kind of like fundamental things, psychological effects and stuff, and built out, UX books on it. Um, I suppose a quick Google search would be like, what are 5 design books every UX designer should read? Uh,
I
oh,
mean, I
there's a
have a
bunch
book
of
called
different.
Design It, which is pretty thick, but
Yeah,
I don't know. I struggle to read through it, and I stopped like a quarter of the way.
yeah, because I don't think the thing is, I don't think UX isn't really a technology problem. It's more of a implementing the UX is a technology problem, but um, UX is more of a psychological problem, or whatever. It's a psychological discipline or whatever. It's how do people think and what do they experience when they're doing things.
I think it's definitely engineering, though. Don't you think so?
I don't know. I'd think of it as more of like an art, right? There aren't, well, maybe there are some
So
fundamental rules
at
you
a,
can apply, but
at casinos, they engineer a user experience, right? They want to keep you on that machine, right? They want to, I don't know what the name of whatever chemicals or whatever, endorphins, whatever, but they want to. The same thing with like your social media apps, like they engineer a user experience to keep you like a crack fiend, just staying on it and keep you hooked.
yeah,
Um, it's just not something that I don't think is a program that's taught at a university level. I think it's something that people are discovering. Like, hey, there's like a borderline science to this, just like software development. It's a blend of art and science. But they just haven't like. I think it's very like. I think people are realizing that there's something there where you can engineer some type of way that someone feels or responds, but there's just no, for lack of a better term, structure to how you would teach that and how you would like disseminate that information um, in regards to formal training. It's just my opinion.
but I don't know if that's true. I mean,
Okay.
there's so there are, like I said, most of the fundamental stuff is all just psychological, right? It's psychology. The Gestalt principles are all psychology. It's how does the human brain interpret patterns and things like that. But I mean, the thing you're talking about, create addictive products. That's all psychology. How do we react to things? So we get a beep on our phone, and that produces, we've trained ourselves to produce that's something potentially good. Yeah. And so that spikes our dopamine, which makes us feel good, and so we come back to it over and over again. But that, if you understand the psychology of it, you can use that and or abuse that. So it's first starting with that psychology, and then saying, well, how do you build a system around that? But
I mean, they do it, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but they do it almost damn near perfectly in on like shows, right? So like, for example, I don't watch TV, but when my girl was over, I binge watched Black Mirror. Well, that's a poor example. But if you take, I never got into Breaking Bad or whatever, the latest Game of Thrones. I never watched any of that. However, I'm, I'm willing to bet that at the end, they just introduce, something that is going to transition into the next story that you just have to see because oh man, I didn't even know that, so and so was still alive. And look what he has. He has her, I mean, they lure you in. I can't think of a right word. They bait you. Maybe that's the best word I can think of. Right. So, like, you know, television, they do a really good job of keeping you hooked, where like they maintain your attention and they keep on trying to lure you into the next segment. And I think like your Instagram, your Twitter, I post something. Oh, did anybody like it? I hope someone liked it, right? And then I
yeah,
get a notification someone liked it. I'm like, yes, someone liked it. I want to see what they said about it. All right.
yeah,
So
that's the cycle. There's a psychological effect with that too, where if there's no resolution to something, you tend to think about or remember something better. So I think it was, I don't know if this was a study or if it was just an anecdote, but basically there's like a waiter, while they're taking an order, they're training themselves to like remember exactly what you ordered and what, how much, and all of your sides and all this stuff, and they go back and they put it in, and once the transaction's finished, their mind just releases that information off, and they don't retain it at all. So it's like there's an effect where basically, while there is no conclusion to something, your mind continues to think about it, but once you reach that conclusion, then your mind just like releases it and says, I don't need to think about this anymore. Um, so
when I take a test, like within a week and a half, I don't remember everything that I crammed for that test.
yeah,
Afterwards, it's like
and that's what so I was talking to, I think it was Nate Taylor or someone like that, and he was talking about, at the end of the day, what he'll do is he'll leave a failing unit test, to come back to in the morning. And besides just knowing where you picked up, I think what happens is, it also, if you do that, there's no, you know there's no conclusion to your day, so your mind will actually still think about the problem, and need to solve the problem while you're off, and you'll remember better where you left off than if you leave something in a concluded state. So I think that kind of thing is really, really brilliant. But that's, again, it's understanding how the human mind works, and then applying a system that takes advantage of that. And I think UX is basically almost all about that for the most part. And so if you can understand those things, you can start to recognize when you make mistakes, like, oh, hey, why does this feel wrong? And maybe be like, oh, well, it's because of this particular thing. Like, there isn't enough space between these things to degroup them, so people mistake them for being related to each other. So if I just increase the margins by 10 more pixels, that's enough to separate out, make a distinction between groups. There's like, I think that you can do stuff like that, but from a starting point of, I've got nothing except for a client's requirements plus a set of psychological principles. I mean, it's got to be something where it's a practice, right? You have to do it and then do it again and do it again, and eventually you learn what works and what doesn't work. So it's just like software development in that regards. I don't think anything's, it's not deterministic for sure. It's way far from it. You got to test. So
No, this is a good conversation, man. So
yeah,
enjoy your day at work. I wish I could know how that feels. And,
I'm not going to work today. I got to,
no,
no, I wanted to, but I got this wedding to go to, and to keep the peace in my family, I've got to take the day off and travel down and be bored for the night. So, but yeah. Anyways, I gotta for next week. I'm just gonna keep working on that game table. I'll post I'll post updates to Twitter and stuff as I go. But I'm hoping I'll have for sure the game surface embedded in where I need. I'm gonna make a decision on whether I'm gonna condense the base of it, and then I want to build out. There's these edges that I want to build out, kind of like cup holders or shelves into. I got to figure out that. So I'm hoping to get at least a conclusion on what I'm going to do for those. So, but
if you really want to go, all right, I'll plant the seed, which I know is like, no, that's out of scope. All right. But like your stuff has cup holders.
yeah, it'll have cup holders. Yeah.
Does it have like USB ports?
I've seen ones with plugins and USBs. I've thought about it because you just have to run the electrical around it and then hook it into a plugin basically. So I know it's doable. I don't have I'd have to watch some videos about what I need to do it or talk to an electrician. But yeah, USBs would be actually a pretty good addition to it. Because people have their phones and stuff or tablets, whatever.
Okay. I'll say one more thing. So like, not only so like you have a table, and I assume I haven't looked at the image in a while, but I assume that there's like some type of like, if this is a table, there's like a slant where you see your pieces or whatever, right?
Sort of, yeah. So there's I'm trying to think of the term, sunken game area, and then up you have like a rail around the outer side of it, and that on some tables will go all the way to the end and over, which is the one that I built before I sent you that picture of on Twitter. This one I think is actually gonna have a small short rail and then some like shelving and stuff to put your pieces or to write stuff on and all that. But yeah. I mean, there's a raised area. I wish I could have taken the picture of what I finished last night, um, but yeah, it's basically the sunken area goes up. Then there's a shelving
Okay, I'm
around
looking
the
at the photo right
outsides.
now. Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a
Yeah,
lot. Go ahead.
I was curious if it made sense to have a stand built into the table for people's phones as well that's angled towards them. So it's kind of like their own personal display in addition to their designated areas where they have their chips or their cards.
That's not a bad idea, actually. I hadn't thought of putting a phone stand in. Is literally, well, either one to just set your phone on, because people are going to be putting them on the counters and mixing them in with stuff. But it'd be kind of cool to just have, yeah.
The question is, do you have it in portrait or landscape? The way that it sits on the stand, and it needs to be angled towards that person. So, like, if this is stand right here, I mean, if this is a table, flat surface area, and then the phone stand is like this right here, it needs to go like this. Kind of needs to be angled so that you can look at it, for whatever reason, versus having to lean over and look at it or having to grab it and look at it. You should just be able to look at it because it's a one-on-one. It's facing you at a 90-degree or whatever angle it is. That's probably more complicated to do. You probably make mistakes and spend a lot of money trying to get that part to work.
Yeah, pine and stuff is cheap, so yeah. So,
They don't
so I
have
think
Legos, man. They don't have like big Lego blocks that you could do all this in. That would be cool.
yeah, that'd be cool. I've thought about actually running through like Minecraft and building like small scale models, or using Google Sketch. You could use. I think you can use Google Sketch to sketch out something like this. I haven't used Google Sketch much in the past, but I know it exists and it's or Google is it Google SketchUp or
Actually, that's going to be something that I'm going to entertain one of these days. If they have huge Lego blocks, I'll just buy it and build my own desk, and then build a kennel for my dog, build everything. That's what
yeah,
I'll do.
just build it out of wood, man. It's a lot of fun.
No, I want something easy that I can modify and not have to, if I make a mistake, have to pay for it. So with Legos the size of bricks, I'll be able to accomplish that. All right, I just yeah, that didn't work. Let me try to do it a different way.
Cool. But yeah, yeah, I guess for the phone thing, it would just be really dependent on whether the phone thing is there just as a thing to hold your phone to just get it out away from you, or if it's to like add it in terms of the like play surface. Like, are you actually using your phone? There's not a lot of games that incorporate a phone that I'm aware of. Um, but the other thing about that too with a phone, I suppose, is that when you're gaming, you're supposed to be involved in the game. If you got your phone there, it's almost like you should put like a vault and be like, all right, you can't access your phone while this stuff's going.
Well, the thing is people are going to be on their phones, period, and they don't have to use it. But majority of the time, people are going to have their phones out. There's always fact check. There's always fact checking whenever you have a group of people at a table, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're
So,
talking about stuff. You're like, oh yeah, too bad we don't have this database of stuff we can look through.
so that's what I was talking about. I want to buy some Legos that are that size and just build a table or something.
I've seen some like I've seen some large yeah, here let me there's a what's this on it's called apparently it's called Everblock. Oh yeah, these are spendy. But I don't know how many you get. Everblock apparently sounds like a something for like I don't know. Is that what you're looking at?
I'm not sure. Now I'm looking at Everblock's website. Yeah, I mean Everblock has adults. It seems to be more subtle colors compared to the children's rainbow colors.
Yeah, they got some good pictures in there too of like stuff they've built out with them, like whole walls and displays. And well, this one's like a whole like somebody built like a shop for like a kitchen, like a food stand out of them, displays for things. Yeah,
Get myself in trouble.
Yeah, this is pretty cool. Oh my gosh, a whole like stage. Someone built a bed.
They built a bed. That would hurt to make love on that. No straight.
There's a bar. Someone built a bar. A couple bars in here.
So,
I don't know, man. Maybe I'll have to move office. Another food shop.
That bar looked dope. Yeah. All right. I didn't mean to distract you.
No, like I said, I'm not working
Stay with the wood.
So. Yeah, well, maybe I'll have to make some sort of little chunked wood to prototype tables faster or something. I don't know, but maybe I'll have to like maybe I'll have to, if we end up moving offices where I'm at, I'll have to think about that. I don't know. I'm kind of so they're talking about buying or getting into a different building, which is like another. It's like 20
What are we
minutes away
talking
or
about?
something. Oh, my work.
Oh, okay.
The building we're in right now is really close to where I live. Uh,
Mhm.
and this one they're talking about moving into is kind of far away, and I'm dreading the idea of having to drive that distance every day. So I don't know if that goes through, I might have to reevaluate and be like, maybe it's time to find a remote job and just. So I don't want to commute. If I wanted to commute, I'd be down in the Twin Cities. So
Well, you're a web developer. You have options. You could get a job like that. I'm so freaking niche. It's disgusting, man.
you just got to get into web development, and then
I
you'd
know.
be.
I was going to pick up I was going to pick up Blazor because I was listening to .NET Rocks and Brian Hunter or whatever his name is. I think he's like program manager of Visual Studio, saying that Blazor is the next generation of the ASP.NET roadmap or whatever. And I was like, oh, okay, well, at least it's in C# now instead of JavaScript. So I was thinking about picking it up, but like I'm trying to get this project done, so it's like I guess I'll pick it up next year or something. But then someone else told me, uh, like another entrepreneur, um, long story. He was like, "No, don't pick up Blazor because it's still Microsoft." I'm like, "Well, this regardless if it's Microsoft, it's ASP.NET Core, so it doesn't matter." Yeah, but most of the industry doesn't realize that, so they're just going to think it's Microsoft centric, and regardless of it running on Linux servers. And I'm like, probably right. So I don't know if that means I learn Rust or whatever other programming language that provides support for WebAssembly. I don't even want to talk about it. What I did want to talk about real fast is I know I'm going scatterbrain. Is do you have any experience with uh, event sourcing or event store?
Uh, Other than just what it is, no.
Okay.
I yeah.
I I posted some guidance yesterday, uh, basically saying, "Hey, I on the server side, I want to practice event sourcing. This is going to be like very new to me. I'm a virgin to it. Is there any like documentation or whatever on using like SQL Server? Since I'm familiar with SQL Server, even though it's a relational database, not an immutable database." And, some members of the community was like, "No, just use Event Store." I'm like, well, because I don't know Event Store, and when I looked at the website, I got intimidated by the configuration that's required to bootstrap it, and I get upset really fast. I shut down. But you
Mhm.
said that you haven't really had much exposure to it, but that's what I plan on leveraging for the whole ordering process is the event sourcing. So I'll let
Yeah.
you know my journey, you know, on probably sometime next month.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem too bad to set it up, but I suppose like when you get into the doldrums of the actual like configuration, it's probably a lot worse. But yeah, for event store, I don't know. It probably would be worth. I mean, looking into it. Looks like it does what it does and does it well.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know.
All right, I'm tapping out.
Cool.
So
Yeah, I better get going.
yeah. All right, Sean, it's been real good stuff. Hey, this was a really good like session. I'm gonna like post maybe like 10 minutes into the conversation when we actually start talking about programming. I'll post that on Twitter.
Cool.
So and LinkedIn. All right, see ya.
Good.
Thanks.
See ya.
Bye.